Everyone at Bondex, welcome to another exciting episode of our weekly live stream. We're nearing the holidays and we're very lucky today because we have a personal friend of mine, Dani Loftus, in the house, complete pioneer in digital fashion, the metaverse, and Web3. So without any more ado, I'm Ignacio Palomera, the CEO, co-founder of Bondex. Here we go, Dani, give us your introduction.
Thank you so much for that, Nacho. I'm so happy to be here. So I founded this outfit to not exist around a year ago. And it's partially because I just saw the immense potential of digital fashion to revolutionize an industry that's traditionally gated. You know, it's very, very hard for new designers to break in. It's very hard when they do break in for them to be fairly reimbursed for their efforts. And equally, there was this colossal consumer base coming out through the metaverse, through these various virtual worlds ranging from Fortnite to Roblox. And at the moment, there are 3.4 billion people who occupy those worlds and wish to express their identities. And as you know, we all know, clothing is a key route to doing that. And so I saw the immense potential of the industry. And, you know, when I first started, I was emailing all of the major newspapers, you know, Wired, Bloomberg, etc. And I was saying, you know, you need to start looking at a space. And they were saying what major brands are going in. And at that point, there was literally no one. And if you flash forward to a year, you've got Gucci, you have Burberry, you have Balmain, you have every single person trying to drop an NFT and integrate into this market, which creates colossal potential for an entirely new ecosystem of creators to come up, an entirely new ecosystem of earners. And so at this outfit does not exist, that's what we're building our entire business around.
That's fantastic. So within that, I wanted to, we at Bondex pride ourselves and we've invented a new innovative model of ecosystem and also how to earn and how to redistribute value among the users of the ecosystem. So tell me how you would redistribute value in this new digital fashion era. I know that there's an expression to it, but I want you to talk about it.
I mean, it's a great question. So what's so exciting about digital fashion is that, first of all, anybody can do it from anywhere in the world. So what you've had in the traditional fashion industry is that you've had a number of fashion capitals where luxury fashion is bought, where luxury fashion is sold, and where, you know, the nexus of luxury in these large fashion houses and magazines and brands operate from. And that excludes people from emerging markets, and it excludes people who, even within those markets, may not have access to the upper echelons of society. And what you have all of a sudden with digital fashion is an ability for people to make clothes from anywhere in the world and then use algorithmically generated assistants. So let's say, you know, Instagram, TikTok, etc., to give those garments exposure. And, you know, around that, you also don't have the sunk costs that you have in the traditional fashion industry. So if I'm a design graduate, I don't have to invest in my first collection without having a consumer base. I can start by distributing it digitally and get it, you know, exposure and get it on people where it's worn. And then if I want to, I can do a made to order model, but it's not until that point. And so that's very interesting in terms of like a baseline ownership. What we then have when we move into the metaverse is we have a very interesting dynamic, which is something that I'm working to address at this outfit doesn't exist, where there are these worn environments where digital fashion is incredibly popular. And that can be virtual games and virtual worlds such as Fortnite, where there are 335 million players and a very, very entrenched skin culture. But there's also social media networks like Facebook and Snap. And unlike traditional physical garments, you know, just by default of this being made, it can't be worn. And so these partnerships are absolutely integral to giving digital fashion utility. And yet, if you operate as a creator in Facebook or Snap or Fortnite or Roblox, you do not own the clothes that you create. You cannot get secondary income from them. In some cases, Facebook and Snap at the moment, you can't actually set a price for your digital clothing. So your filters are completely free. And that provides a barrier to entry because there's a lack of incentive for people to go into the space. And so then actually, when you look at Web3 and the technologies that enables, it's actually a completely different ecosystem because that's an ecosystem based around ownership and based around monetization. So if I have a digital fashion NFT, I can program in, obviously, you know, the traditional royalty model, so secondary seller fees. So, you know, let's say I'm an up and coming designer and this blazer gets sold for $100. In the future, it could, you know, my brand could take off and this blazer could be worth $10,000. And if I was in traditional fashion, I would not get any of that benefit. But in Web3 fashion, I could program in a 20% secondary seller fee. So then when it gets traded, I can also monetize, which is highly advantageous. One step further than that, there are also already things called fractionalized ownership protocols, where, as I'm sure you know, multiple people go into creating any single garment. So this is quite a boring example, but let's say you were wearing a floral shirt. The person who created the print would be a creator, the person who created the pattern for the shirt. All of it would come together to create the garment. And you can actually program in that not only that single wearer is reimbursed, but every single person who has been involved in making the garment can actually earn income. And so once you manage to synthesize, these NFT-based ownership potentials with worn environments where clothes can be, actually utilized as clothes, you have an immense and very exciting market for creators.
That is super cool. That is, it is very, very next generation Web3 disrupting that. And it would get rid of a lot of jobs from where I can see, but I think it's going to create a lot of new jobs and new potential. So right now, when you look at the blockchain industry, and we see this as Bondex, is predominantly led by, technology professionals. And then after that, there's marketing, business development, legal, etc. But I think this is going to create a new, and there's NFTs, there's creative in NFTs, but it's more of on the artist level. I guess this will be an avenue for fashion professionals to enter the blockchain job market, right? So what types of jobs? Is there going to be someone sewing some NFTs? Probably not.
Well, I think so. You have obviously like the designers and the creators, and kind of as you identified, you would normally have, let's say, designers and then manufacturers, and that it's a much kind of, there are lots of steps in the chain. Whereas what you have now is you have designers who also obviously, because things are digitally manufactured, become manufacturers. Actually, flip side to that is, because with each worn environment, there's a different way of wearing. So like in a game, you have to tailor something to an avatar. Whereas like, in another space, you have to actually create something as an AR filter. There is still actually a market for digital tailors. And there's a company called DressX that acts as a digital tailoring service as well as their marketplace. So, if I want to wear this on my human form, I can send in the digital design files and someone will tailor it to my body. But I think that's going to be automated. But, there is still that. There's a lot of stuff to be said around these like digital fashion NFT specific platforms. So a lot of kind of, the marketing that happens is still happening on art sites like Super Rare or like OpenSea or whatever. And first of all, that doesn't have a centralized collector base of people who want to buy digital fashion. And it also doesn't enable wearership. So I think there's actually a lot to be said around, the marketing that's going to come in and the marketplaces that will come in around selling digital fashion, as well as actually, there are a couple of digital fashion stylists emerging as well, which is an interesting dynamic that can also be thought about.
Repeat that.
Digital fashion stylists.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah.
So you think if you were someone in fashion now, you're at Parsons, you're at Marangoni, whatever, you're studying fashion design, what would your recommendation to those people be in terms of the skill sets that they should pick up so that they can join the workforce of the future of fashion?
So first of all, great question. So at the moment, it's colossally underserved, like it's crazy. So I've spoken at Parsons. I'm also actually launching an initiative in the new year with 3 of kind of the leaders in digital fashion. And basically what we're going to be doing is we're going to start a pipeline going from those fashion institutions into digital platforms. Because if you're a traditional fashion designer, these tools are hyper intimidating for you. And secondly, the majority of the resource base is currently is community driven. So people are learning these skills from YouTube and getting hired by, Selfridges, Fendi, etc. So first of all, learning these skill sets and centralizing education, I think, is absolutely integral. And what we're also going to see is, at the moment, there's a lot of freelance digital, design work out there, and there aren't a lot of digital fashion designers. So, pretty much everyone I know in the community has been poached by like Fendi, Adidas, Tesla, etc. to do this work because there's such a lack of talent. But what will happen soon is, major brands need to see this as an important vertical in and of itself. It's not just a marketing opportunity, it's actually a revenue generation opportunity. And that's the shift we're going to see in the next couple of years. And so people are going to have entirely in-house digital design teams. Nike just acquired Artifact Studios. That was colossal. But, everyone is going to go into this. And so there are going to be in-house teams. There are going to be a lot of jobs. And there are also obviously going to be these platforms where creators can monetize, the net-a-porters of digital fashion, all of that kind of stuff. So I would say learning the skill set, and then also actually I would say learning the mindset. So I think that will probably be natural from for 16, 17, 18-year-olds. We've got 3.4 billion gamers. The majority, it's something like 74% of people under the age of 18 game already. So they will understand what's needed in digitally native environments in ways that probably you and I wouldn't even know in terms of identity and expression. So I think it's really immersing yourself in that world and getting to grips with that new consumer base.
That's very interesting. That's absolutely fascinating. And some of the educational thing, we really can relate to it in the general job market that you see now in the blockchain industry. There needs to be education so that, listen, it's the hottest jobs market on the planet because it's the fastest growing industry on the planet, blockchain is. But it's extremely underserved with a very immature talent market. So people are getting their jobs of Discord and Twitter, which are not job markets, right? So you need to centralize educational tools with a marketplace model in order for people to upskill, reskill, and then be able to join the blockchain industry. So I completely agree with you. We see it in the market as well. But okay, in terms of where people will wear it, right? I know that you've talked about the video games. That's the existing market that exists today. But there's still not physical clothing that people will wear forever, for now, right? So, my point is, people will buy them for their online avatars, but what you're betting on is that the metaverse will grow, and this is where people will wear their clothes, right?
Yes.
That's essentially the simple bet.
Yeah, that is the bet. And we're seeing it colossally, and I think it's going to grow in two ways. So obviously we have the gaming market, 3.4 billion gamers. Gaming is essentially becoming the future of entertainment. But then what you also have these incredible investments which are going on by, let's Meta, key example, in changing virtual environments into the future of work, the future of culture, the future of social interaction and social spaces. So, Fortnite has now a mode where you don't even game. It's not challenge-based, it's literally socialization. And as our social networks and actually the way we socialize online become these fully immersive networks, instead of, being a curated version of your physical self on Instagram, you have actually selves that you create fully from nothing. And those are going to become and already becoming inextricably linked to your digital identity. And so I think, one of my favorite stories is, I was reading a whole article on the school in, I think it was Australia, and literally kids will come in crying because they only have a basic skin in the game Fortnite. And then they'll beg their parents for hundreds or thousands of dollars because they will be bullied in the classroom if their skin in the game is not good enough. And, there's an entire genre on YouTube with the top video has over 20 million views called bullying defaults in Fortnite. And that's bullying people who have basic skins. So it's already happening that these digital identities are trumping our physical identities. And, secondly, look at the whole NFT art market. Look at Bored Apes, look at CryptoPunks, look at how much clout those generate. When I was in Miami just now, people are going around with CryptoPunks on their watches and being like, look, this is more valuable than a Rolex because I have a piece of digital art on this that costs $2 million and I'm wearing it on my Apple Watch. Or people are having chains made where you can have your CryptoPunk on it. So digital, it's coming. It's kind of already here.
I agree with you. I think it's a very exciting time. Okay, I'm going to put myself in the shoes of what if I'm a boomer? What if I'm a bit against this? What would you say about the reservation of us going too immersive in the digital life and the digital world? You see it with China's restricted video game use by younger kids. What is the impact on society? Is this the right way? Is this the right way for society to go? To be completely, to have a digital self, a digital world to escape to. The way I think about it is that is seen in Inception, where they like their dreams better than reality. So now they're plugged in the whole time. There's that other movie called with Steven Spielberg about the video game, and now all that matters is this video game where everyone plays. Do you think there's a risk of this dystopian society if everyone starts liking their virtual lives more than their real ones?
So it's very, very good question. I actually have a book with me right now called Reality is Broken, which is all about actually how the world should become more like a video game and how video games and gaming actually provides better human incentives.
Okay. Who was that written by? The founder of Nintendo?
She's
The CEO of
Yeah, her name-
PlayStation.
No. It's not. Her name's Jane McGonigal, and she's a gaming PhD, and she's a game designer. But all the games that she designs are actually about like improvement of our lives in the physical world, which is what's super interesting. And basically, so this is the thing. On the one hand, I agree with you. On the other hand, all technology can be coded to basically improve social consciousness. So there are already certain actually digital fashion-centric environments which will reward sustainable behavior in the real world. So let's say, for example, there is a fabric which has already been invented, which can be scanned as a RFID tag. You could maybe be rewarded in cryptocurrency for how long you keep your garment or whether or not you recycle it. And then also this idea of immersion into virtual spaces. I'm, somebody who quite likes, the physical world, but, for quite a long time, a very close friend of mine that, wasn't very well for a long time. And she built this entire community from, her bed for 3 years around her digital self and her digital identity. And, let's say you're living in a tiny town in the middle of nowhere and you have a specific interest base and nobody else in your town has that. All of a sudden you can connect and create these communities around your desires and around your affiliations, which may make you feel more comfortable with yourself in the physical world. Because when you step out into it, you understand that there are actually people who are like you and people you participate in things with, whereas in the physical world, you may be alienated. So I obviously think our physical world is important. And I think thinking about how you can program in elements into virtual worlds, which actually maybe make you understand the physical world better. And, it's actually been proven that people who game have a better ability to think strategically or exhibit empathy, because if they're going into game, they're thinking 5 steps ahead, or maybe they're thinking, what does this character want? What do they need? So if used properly, it can actually lead to positive impacts in the physical world, but it's all about consciousness.
That is very interesting. This is my only worry to that. The people who build the current digital world, and it's called the Silicon Valley exit, right? So anything that takes you outside of your real world, Instagram, Facebook, all the algorithms, they haven't really built a very sustainable world, or one that is actually very good for people, right? As we've learned from documentaries, It's a great hack, which you can argue it's a bit sensationalized, but who's going to be in charge of building this metaverse and digital world? Because if it's the company Meta, I have my reservations about its safety or how good it will actually be for its users, because they've historically put profit above really the well-being of, the masses. So
Agreed.
my question to you is, okay, you're going to be making digital fashion. How is your company going to be structured? How are you going to foster, digital fashion to be a thing? And then how will you monetize it yourself? Will it be a company that creates skins and fashion for all the different platforms, metaverses? Like, how do you go to market?
So great question. So it's a very exciting time because my white paper is actually coming out on Tuesday.
Oh,
so
wow.
I am basically launching a platform. And, let's say the base foundation of this platform is this idea of wearership. So key issue, nothing can be used properly, it can't be worn, blah, blah. That's the foundation. But then actually building on top of this foundation is this idea that digital fashion is an asset that can be monetized and the value can be maximized. And obviously, first of all, the value comes from self-expression, so it comes from wearership. But secondly, it actually comes from ownership. And so if you're operating on Fortnite or Meta or all of these, first of all, you don't get the royalty fees, as we said. But secondly, as a consumer, you can't resell your garments. And that stops them being earnable assets, and that reduces the incentive to consume them. So 81% of gamers in the US have said that they would spend more on skins if they actually had any type of real world value. And that currently isn't, being functional. So we're going to have, a platform where you can buy and sell clothes and they can be ported into worn environments where they hold maximal context. So that's the baseline. But then building on top of that, I'm building a system of what I'm calling ownership protocols. And so these can be ingrained into garments, and they allow both creators and consumers to monetize. So 2 examples I'll give you is, first of all, this idea of where to earn. So obviously the influencer economy is highly lucrative. The same thing is going to happen in the metaverse. So I'm going to have protocols in my clothing where you can be automatically reimbursed for the amount of time that you wear a specific garment, or, maybe you'll be at a specific event and the brand will say, we want 100 people at, the Ariana Grande concert in Fortnite to be wearing our outfit. And then you'll be able to participate by kind of tick boxing that activation and being a participant. So that's number 1. And the second ownership protocol we're integrating is rental. So if I have a digital fashion garment, I should be able to automatically lease it out, put it in somebody else's wallet, and be automatically reimbursed for the amount of time that they wear it.
So like
And
rent a runway on the metaverse.
exactly. And with rent the runway, like I have my stuff on peer-to-peer rental platforms and I earn money from them, but I am constantly paranoid that somebody is going to ruin my clothes or not return them. Whereas when you have digital fashion, there's no wear and tear. And that's what makes it so interesting actually as an asset, because it's not going to be ruined. It will come back to you. And so that's what I'm building out. And then in terms of, the positive social impact. So for a number of reasons. First of all, because I think the digitally native generation of consumers is going to want digitally native fashion. And also because everything I said at the beginning in terms of a lack of barriers to entry that come from costs, that come from exposure, etc. I think the future is Web3 native designers. And it's those designers from anywhere in the world who may have not been able to participate in the traditional fashion industry, but are like hyper creative that I want to further. Those were the people who are sold on my platform. Those will be the people who can participate in this ownership. And I also want to use it as this way of female financial inclusion in the metaverse. So one of the biggest problems that we have, you look at the NFT market, 5% of artists who benefited from the NFT boom last year were female. 16% of NFT holders are women. And, part of the reason for that is it's a male-centric market. The collectibles created or that are generating the most value, like cars and art and, trading cards for sports, they're geared towards men. Communities.
I was sitting with a few big guys yesterday, OGs of blockchain, and I wasn't familiar with this term called degens. Are you familiar with it?
Of course. Yeah.
And then I was learning about the demographics, about basically it's for men so far, blockchain.
Yeah,
and that needs to change. But if you put fashion and PR, okay, so this is gonna get very. We're gonna have fun with this, Danny, because I know I'm a feminist because I love women, and I know you're a feminist because you're a strong, independent woman. So we're both good there. So there's something called the wage gap. But if you look at the statistics, part of the wage gap is because women tend to go towards jobs that are more in creative fields that earn less money as a whole overall industry, so they can get paid less than when I worked in finance and I had women in my team. They earned exactly the same as me, right?
Yeah.
But if right now blockchain is male dominated, as we talk to people in talent, they're desperate to get women on their teams, right? There's no women. And so what you're saying is interesting. But if you put fashion into the digital world, I can see you're going to help the adoption of women in blockchain. They're going to be interested by digital dress NFTs and digital, like I can totally see it. So I haven't said anything inappropriate there. It's all being politically correct, accurate, and I'm all for the women. But what do you think about that? And that's part of what you were saying.
So literally exactly as you say. So like it's a male dominated market. Obviously there are like a lot of reasons that it's male dominated. Partially, the degen culture, which is this idea of flipping NFTs, it's highly risk adverse. And if you look traditionally, women are less risk adverse than men. There's also this whole thing about financial education being centered towards men. It's been the way it always is. And also the communities in general, sweeping generalization, but that men exist in, those support ownership. It's what have I traded today, etc. Whereas female focused communities, like, support consumership. It's what did I buy today? What am I wearing? And so what I think is very interesting about digital fashion is, first of all, it has this unique ability to empower creators by these ownership protocols. So 72% of designers of physical fashion are women, but 12% of CEOs. So the money is not going to women, despite the fact they're the creators. So first of all, by having a platform like this, you're empowering women to actually be the ones who earn the money, because, you can foster your own brand. You can market it without actually needing to be subservient to somebody else.
Yeah, this is intermediation, right? And access and visibility.
Exactly. But secondly, I'm specifically generating these ownership protocols. And so it's my idea that, a 14, 15-year-old girl is going to come in because she likes a dress. She's like, wow, I want to wear this. This looks sick. Then she's going to have an asset. And once she has an asset, she has an incentive to have the financial education around that asset. So she can then earn from it. She can rent it out. And, maybe at some point she'll be able to stake it. So it's then going to give her a vested interest in participating in the financial inclusion, in learning about the NFT space, and then monetizing. So it's an idea to begin with people coming in as wearers and turning them into earners through a medium which is female focused.
That's great. I'm all for it. That's fantastic. And I really hope it happens. And I know it's going to happen because you're going to make it happen. I really believe in you, Danny. I have the privilege of being your friend, and I'm very excited when you left your VC, your consulting job, to be an exciting entrepreneur in residence. And I wanted to ask you, how did Miami go? You seem to be hype. You seem to be giving speeches. I was very proud of you. Tell us how the last Miami Art Basel went. A lot of us couldn't go. Tell us how it was. All NFT everywhere, right? Tell us a bit more how it was.
So it's crazy. So, there was everybody, if I've been to quite a few Art Basels, and I actually vowed I was never going to go back. And then I went for work, which was mental. And, 3 years ago, it was all about the art parties. It was all about the fashion parties. And now you had all my friends who are working in fashion trying to get into the NFT parties. And it's a very funny, world. It's a funny amalgamation of people. There is so much money in the space. We've got like Snoop Dogg, Blondish, everyone kind of, flying around because crypto is currently, the new cool thing. And everyone wants to get into it. So it really wasn't Art Basel. It was Crypto Basel all the way this year. I was pretty much just there for work. So I was meeting with people like, 24/7. And I think what was super exciting for me was I've had, other digital fashion leaders that I followed since, 2019. And I was meeting them for the first time in person. And we were, all speaking about, how we can advance the industry in the next year. And I also spoke at DecentralCon, which was, probably the biggest blockchain conference out there. And what was exciting was, I began my talk by saying, who here has heard of digital fashion? And if this would have been a year ago, nobody would have put their hand up, or like 2 gamers. And, 70% of the room put their hands up. And then somebody else asked who has a gaming account. It was probably only 30%, meaning that this is really hitting, if not the mainstream, but definitely the crypto mainstream.
That's how it is. It's the traditional progression, right? And we're having the same thing where we're blockchain industry focused, and that's our target market. And I don't think I've actually told you about our NFTs. Have I told you about our NFT plans or no?
No, tell me about your NFTs.
So, there's PFPs, right? And what you're talking about is very different, which is digital fashion or having your own prompts. But we are actually believers in like proof of participation or proof of attendance protocols. So we believe that we're not just going to be giving out, kind of the NFT itself is not going to be a product. It will have secondary value, but it's going to be focused at getting engagement out of our users. And for example, we're going to have a curated news feed, which you're going to be a speaker on because, you're hooked up because you're my friend. And for example, you're going to have a speaker NFT to be able to have access to be speaking on the NFT. So only thought leaders and people in the space will be heard at first, and as well as having news. And then we're going to have certain giveaways and other types of, again, proof of attendance NFTs that you don't just get or you don't just mint. You need to do certain actions, add value to the Bondex ecosystem in order to earn them. Because otherwise, it just becomes a bit of speculation, degen targeted,
Yeah.
So that's how we plan to run it. And we're excited to be running our first POAP before the year ends. And then we'll be doing a big one, probably creating a DAO actually, Danny, which I know you're also a big fan of. So we'll be creating a DAO in January for Bondex users, which we call Bondies, to kind of unionize a little bit. And they'll be one of the governing bodies that runs the ecosystem. Because as you know, we're distributed, not completely decentralized, but that'll be a way to have, and those people will have to have their NFTs essentially. And listen, we're getting close to the end of the episode. So I'm going to do the sweepstakes that I do at the end of every episode, which is asking my guest, even though she's digital fashion, I know you're not into trading, but you just went to the NFT market. You're probably plugged in with some of the biggest dogs in the blockchain industry. So I know you hear things and you're very smart. So I know you have your opinion about how long is this bull run going to go for? When is the bear market coming? I want to hear what Daniella Loftus has to say.
Yeah, I mean, so I own some crypto, not as much as I used to because I have a lot of it in my DAO. But I've got some coins, and the crash that happened last week wasn't great for anyone. None of us liked it. But what's very interesting is I'm an investor in a fund called Red DAO, which is a DAO centered around digital fashion. And some of my co-investors have been in the space since like 2013 and have really developed portfolios. And the organization that set it up, it also set up Olympus. So we're quite plugged in like the DeFi space. And what a lot of the people that I am close to are basically saying, who've been in it for a couple of years, they're like, we've been through a ton of these markets. They're very important because what they do is they filter out the projects and the people who aren't genuinely in the space. And it's a flush. And ultimately I couldn't be more bullish, as is obvious, on this technology, on the impact it can drive. And it will sweep, and it will come back up. But it's a way of flushing out those people who aren't authentic. My first ever career was in blockchain in 2017, 2018. I was running an ICO then, and we had the crash as well. And I went from working with an agency that had like 200 people to literally all of those people's email addresses being invalidated. But it came back, and it's now come back with even more force, with even better leaders, with improved technological adoption. And so if you hold your currency, and if you believe in the projects that you're holding, it's going to come back stronger than ever. Take advantage of the opportunity to buy cheap when the bear market happens.
That is a fantastic answer. I could not be in more agreement with you. My biggest regret was losing a bit of enthusiasm through the last bear market, because I actually was in early and not having kept going. So that's one of my biggest regret. But Bondex is my revenge company on myself. And same with our CEO.
Exactly.
Our CEO, one of the earliest miners of Bitcoin in 2010, and after the second crash, sold at 600, made a lot of money. But we're both angry with ourselves, and we're not letting go of this bone. And this is why Bondex is going to be a fantastic success. And I could not be more in agreement with you. Danny, I miss you very, very much. And I'm going to end the stream for everyone. Thank you for joining for another episode, and have a fantastic weekend. And happy holidays. Hopefully we'll have one more live stream next week, but I wish everyone the best, and see you later.